Okay, so welcome everyone to the quantum track panel discussion. The panel is expected to be or supposed to be an informal discussion about the future of quantum computing and quantum communication. We heard a lot about quantum computing before, and it's good to have this opportunity where we have key leading scientists and experts that are moving this forward, this technology forward, and then hear their opinion about how they see the future of quantum technologies, quantum computations, quantum communications. I'll keep it as an informal discussion. We will go through like few rounds of questions from our side, and then we will open it to the audience and their questions. So our panelists today are Professor José Ignacio Latorre. Professor José Ignacio is one of the world-famous theoretical physicists who has pioneered multiple quantum centers across the globe. We're very lucky to have him collaborating with us on few initiatives. Professor José Ignacio is the head of the Quantique Center of the Barcelona Supercomputing Center. I think his publications speak to themselves. I'm gonna move, and then yes. So the second panelist we have is Dr. Marc Manzano. Marc, I've known Marc for 3 years. Marc has led the crypto teams both from a research and development and multiple technological ventures before. Currently, he's leading the the crypto research and development department at the Technology Innovation Institute. He has worked extensively on the development and the cryptanalysis of multiple algorithms, and then we have been publishing quite extensively. And then we have Jan Allain. I think, Jan, you had an earlier talk today, so some of you may have seen Jan. Jan is a serial entrepreneur. He has his new venture, which is basically and you have your motto of do it yourself. He has his latest venture in the field of quantum computing, which is NextGen Q, and we're lucky to have him on our panel today too. So quantum physics is not new. It has already been applied to multiple technologies, from laser technologies, from nuclear magnetic resonance, from computing chips. But I think now we are entering what I'd like to call the second generation or second area of quantum deployment. We are seeing a lot of movement. We've seen before the quantum supremacy claim by Google 3 weeks ago, where they have announced, or actually where it has leaked, that they have built a 53 qubit computer with a minimized crosstalk between the qubits. And then since then, or even before, we have seen a lot of funding, a lot of investment that is happening at the government level and the private institutions in order to move quantum computing forward. So my first question to José Ignacio is, why now quantum computing, and why is there such an exponential growth in the different research areas in computing, in algorithms, in middleware development, and also on quantum communication?
Well, the easy answer is that you need time for real research, for basic research, before you get to the applied research and to the implementations for business. Quantum technology has been developing all along the 20th century, and maybe what people do not perceive easily is that there has been an increase of precision. So we have now a much better technology as far as precision is concerned. We can do things much better than before, and we have better equipment. Let's think of quantum mechanics fitting back itself, no? You do lasers with quantum mechanics, but now the lasers allows you to do a better chip and so on, no? And now you use chips and lasers to develop further chips and so on. So it's feeding itself all the time. So there is a need for time for basic research to develop, and that's essential. Now, why things got now so exciting? First, we needed the idea. So till the 80s, nobody thought that we could process information at that level. So you need ideas, and then you need people well prepared. And then you need some milestone that that are not easy to see. For instance, the Yale University developed these ideas of transmodes, and suddenly all the pieces are put together, and you think that there is a possibility of jumping ahead to a real commercial step. And for that, you need an enormous amount of talent and money. So, you know, the way I see it, many people see as a disruption. I call it disruption. Many people call it revolution. For me, it's a progress. You bet on basic science, and little by little, you get there. Okay, quantum GPS would not be possible without general relativity. So you need Einstein to have a GPS. Well, you need Einstein, you need a satellite, you need the control of light, you need many things. So I do think that simply, in my opinion, it was good, solid progress, and that's why I'm so positive about the future of quantum computation, because it's about solid progress that we can do.
Thank you, José Ignacio. Jan, this progress that we are achieving on quantum computing, it's leading to a lot of speculations about how can we use quantum computers, about the applications of quantum computers. From your perspective, what would be the first realistic case, like realistically speaking, of applying quantum computing, and what impact will it have in that field that it will be applied to?
To have a useful application, we need to compare what we are able to build as a number of qubits for quantum computer or communication side. So actually, I think we can build a quantum computer with around 50 to 100 qubits. This is few qubits to do something realistic, be used in the industry. However, there is I want to mention two parts. One, if with a small quantum computer, you can do also what I call a quantum repeater. And a quantum repeater is like a router, but for the quantum internet. I think that it could be one of the possible applications in the near term. And in another domain, some algorithm use few qubits in chemistry. So we can use quantum computer with around 100 of qubits to make some not so useful, but beginning to be useful things in chemistry.
Okay, thank you. Mike, along the same lines of the applicability of quantum computers, and you've been working in the crypto field for quite a while, and you're seeing the impact that is expected of quantum computers on crypto. So what do you expect the short-term and long-term impact of quantum computing on crypto, cybersecurity, and artificial intelligence fields?
So on the long term, that's the easy question to answer, because basically the impact is going to be huge on the long term, as we are seeing the whole evolution in the last years. The hard question, I think, is to have a look now on the short term. For instance, when it comes to cryptography, in the short term, normally when we design crypto schemes and crypto protocols, normally we always think about a possible attacker trying to break what we do. And we can divide these attacks into two types: an active attack or a passive attack. So on the short term, basically active attacks are not feasible by quantum computers, mainly because there aren't quantum computers powerful enough to break nowadays cryptographic primitives. But when it comes to the passive setting, where an attacker can be recording conversations, encrypted conversations from critical or sensitive personalities, it might be important to consider. So for this main reason, in 2016 and 2017, NIST started the whole initiative to define the new post-quantum crypto standards. It's an ongoing effort. It's expected to finish into I would say 3 to 4 years. And until there, what should we do? Should we just wait and not do anything until the whole competition finishes and NIST defines what are the next standards? Or can we proactively start protecting and putting in place some measures in order to have and offer some solutions to these problems? My opinion here is that there are things that can be done right now. There are promising candidates that most probably will be standardized at the end. Also, there is a very interesting topic is whether solutions now should go fully post-quantum or should be hybrid, combining classical cryptography with post-quantum cryptography. In industry, there is a very interesting conversation now related to this, and also another problem that has to be tackled by us and by people that work on research and development of cryptographic protocols and primitives is basically how can we adapt these post-quantum crypto schemes to fit into real-world applications. So real-world applications that are currently in production were designed under certain requirements, and classical cryptography was meeting them, but post-quantum crypto schemes might not be meeting them for every possible use case. So that's also an open problem that has to be solved. Then when it comes to IA, I think that in the short term, quantum computing might have an impact. There are a lot of efforts to develop quantum and classical algorithms to speed up certain processes of artificial intelligence tasks, and I foresee that also on the long term it will be even greater. So.
Okay, so basically you're saying that quantum computers will be more of enablers for artificial intelligence. And
exactly.
Maybe along the same lines, José Ignacio, you're working on quantum simulation using superconducting bits and quantum annealers quite a bit. So you've been working with private and public institutions to find applicability or use cases for that. So how did you see this being applied in modern society, and what is the impact that this will have?
It's a necessary future, no? I had never worked for a bank like I'm doing now, and I'm very impressed by how good it's working. A large bank came to us and simply said, we foresee that quantum computers will be relevant. We want to be ready for that. So we will do some investment to analyze how quantum computers would speed the relevant tasks that we have. And we made a team of, by now we are 5 scientists and a team of 3 people from the bank. And we meet every week, and on the blackboard, and we have been working for 7 or 8 months. And indeed, we are ready now to make our first publication. We have found an algorithm which is not trivial, and we are very, very happy. We failed on the first problem. It didn't work. They wanted a very specific task that we could not improve from neural networks. We found no way of improving. So this is the kind of symbiosis I foresee. I mean, the clever corporations should not go and say, do something which is infinitely better than the classical things. They should really learn all these new avalanche of ideas and work together with institutions. Let them be private or public. I mean, research is what matters. So I foresee an intense world of collaborations between research and applications, which I like it very much, may I say.
Thank you. Yeah, switching from quantum computations to, we're hearing a lot lately about quantum communications, the quantum internet, and the usage of all the underlying technologies, quantum key distributions, etc. What's your take on quantum communications and the eventual event of having a fully quantum internet, quote unquote?
First of all, I need to add that for quantum internet or quantum communication or quantum key distribution, sometimes most of the people think that it's not hackable. It's not the case. It's hackable because you can send a sort of denial of service on quantum computation, on quantum telecommunication. Because if you eavesdrop the key during the key exchange, even with a quantum channel, it's just a fiber optic channel most of the time, and you can hack it, and you not hack it. You can send a sort of denial of service on the system, because if you eavesdrop the key and you just have to put a tap on the fiber optic, you just break the right case of sending. So you break the encryption protocol. So the main idea with a QKD, which stands for quantum key distribution, it has a tremendous advantages over a traditional key distribution, because if someone intercepts your communication, you know that someone is on the line because the key is disappeared. And so it's a very, very huge advantages of what I call the quantum internet. If we have a quantum internet, we are all able to know if there is someone on the line. So it's a very good benefit for all the community, I think, and for all the industry. This is my point.
That's from a benefit perspective, and from a risk perspective, what do you see? From a risk perspective.
About quantum computer or quantum telecommunication?
Well, quantum comms, yeah, quantum telecommunication.
As usual, you can do bad and ugly things when you have so powerful encryption technology. You can send a message that it could not be decrypted. But I'm an old hacker. I work in the InfoSec industry since 25 years. So I really... You may know that there is some attacks that is possible on quantum communication because we use hardware devices. Those devices are not perfect, and those imperfections help us to find the key even if the QKD protocol is theoretically secured. So even with quantum internet, there is some trick to be able to access those data. So we need to think to all this detail when we will deploy a quantum internet or a simple quantum communication for banks, for example, between between two nodes. So my point of view is that as an InfoSec community here in Hacking the Box, we need to explain to the world of quantum physicists or quantum non-aware people that we can do best things with quantum technology, and as usual there is some error or some defect in the hardware that could help some bad guys to do bad things. But I think for us, as a human, it's a new way of communication with more secure techniques.
Okay, so I would like to remain with you actually on the same topic of using quantum technologies. And this is a question to everybody here, is that how do you see quantum technologies, both if we were to focus on quantum random number generators and QKD, playing a role in cybersecurity problems, not necessarily only crypto problems, and potentially artificial intelligence as well?
It's a huge question. Well, to continue and following your discussion, I'd like to mention that you can break, as you said, the denial of service because the EV interferes and then you have to cut the communication. But in particular for a satellite, when you drop from Charlie to Alice and Bob, And, with lasers that lock the position of the satellite and the receiver, to be Eve, you should have a plane and go around and things like that. So there might be situations that it's quite useful. I mean that it will be very difficult to do a denial of service attack. No, I mean that the way we think of quantum cryptography, there are several protocols, and I hope that there will be more in the future. No, and some will be more useful for something, and the others for another kind of communication. And also that the fact that there are countries like Singapore who are hardwiring the country to have quantum cryptography all over the island.
Yeah, my opinion from the cryptographic point of view is that quantum cryptographic solutions are very expensive compared to what traditional cryptography could offer. So at the end, there is a part of the cryptographic community that actually pushes back against QKDs and everything related to quantum cryptography because of this reason, because of the cost of implementing and deploying these kind of solutions. But my opinion is that there are use cases for everything, and there might be use cases where using quantum cryptography or QKD to perform key exchanges might not be feasible because of the cost of it. Maybe for wide-scale deployment, okay, you're not going to deploy that in an entire large country. You might do that in Singapore, but not in a country like Russia, for instance. But QKD could be really useful when it comes to secure communications, for instance, between critical entities of a country, or between sensitive individuals that their communication has to be extremely secured. So my opinion is that QKD could also be useful in these scenarios. And when it comes to QRNG, that's a totally separate topic. So QRNGs are a very good source of randomness that at the end pull the randomness from quantum phenomena. I'm not an expert on that. I mean, if I'm saying something wrong, I think that Ignacio can correct. But in the world of crypto, there are certain operations that would require a huge amount of good randomness. For instance, last week we were discussing with a QRNG vendor in Europe, and basically they explained us a use case that we weren't even aware. So when it comes to have an electronic voting solution deployed so that people can vote in some kind of elections electronically from the phone or from the laptops, there is a step in the whole electronic voting protocol called mixing. At that step, basically all the votes that have been received by the solution in the database are shuffled. That operation is very demanding in terms of randomness, and there are some vendors that are inserting QRNGs in those specific parts of the solution in order to get all the source of randomness from a proper source. So in the world of cryptography, for sure, there are a lot of use cases. And then when it comes to machine learning, there are also several tasks that are very hungry in terms of randomness. So I also see that QRNGs could be useful in these scenarios.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, anything to add on this topic from your end?
What is this topic?
The usage of quantum technologies, QRNGs, QKDs with cybersecurity problems.
Actually, main of the crypto generator that run on our IT system are pseudo-random generator. So it's not randomness, basically, but it's useful for us for the moment. So I think as quantum mechanically is random at the basic level, I'm not a physicist, so sometimes I say some wrong things, but I think quantum mechanically is really random. So it could be useful for cryptography because at If you see the last backdoor, or I don't know, it's a backdoor, in classical quantum generator found by, I don't remember, but a few weeks ago, sometime found a backdoor in a quantum number generator with a quantum, with a classical random generator. With a quantum random generator, normally there can't be any backdoor. Mm-hmm. So it could be really useful for cryptography. Or if you find a backdoor, you find a backdoor in natural behavior. Have a good try.
Okay, thank you. Questions more on the role of governments and research institutions in advancing quantum computing. And I would like to actually hear your opinions on how governments should sponsor quantum computing research in order to move that forward. And then the second question is, once this happens and we have a breakthrough, how do you see the way forward to industrialize and commercialize quantum computers and quantum technologies in general?
From my opinion, I run a business on quantum company, so I build my own quantum computer. I'm trying to build one. The main advantages with all the countryside program is to send some money to try something in every technology we could use to make a quantum computer. The main goal they have is to send the money to the researcher, to the entrepreneur in all technology. That's the first point. The second point, and I think is very important, and we have exactly the same issue in InfoSec industry. We are in the quantum industry. I have a lack of skills. I can't find people that are able to manage all the new paradigm we have in quantum computing, in quantum cryptography, or in quantum telecommunication. So I think the second main advantages or goal for our governments is to be able to train all the people to those new type of technology, new type of telecommunication, and new type of computing. This is my point.
Okay, José Ignacio.
Well, you know, the role of governments is completely different in North America, in Europe, in China, and in other countries like Emirates, Israel, Australia, Canada. So making a common opinion on that really doesn't make sense. The way it works is that Europe believes in open science, open source, and therefore they are trying to enter this field to guarantee that the research is public, which is not the case in other countries. America reacted, and the White House has a plan of $1.5 billion to encourage all the system to do further research. China, we always mention Alibaba and Baidu, but you should know that very many universities are hiring people from all over the world to be competitive. And in other countries, simply the governments are putting a fraction of the standard budget. Now, let me be critical. What I find is that in all the governments I've met, the people taking decisions are not educated sufficiently in the decisions they are taking. So there is a mismatch between the typical bureaucracy of a government and the reality of the speed of the field. And this is very bad, because then the money is used in the wrong way, or allocated in the wrong way, or is not producing the solutions that it should. So I must confess that although I've been all my life in the public sector, I now see the private sector working much better through this path.
We open questions to the audience along the same lines, but more specifically for the deployment of quantum-resistant crypto. When do you think government should start the deployment, and what would be a realistic timeline for that?
So, as I said at the beginning, very briefly, even though there are no new standards that are quantum resistant that will come out from the NIST post-quantum crypto competition, I think that it's already, the technology is already mature enough to be deployed. Now the question comes whether it could be deployed as standalone or in a combination with other traditional or classical algorithms. I'm more of the opinion that hybrid solutions could be better as of now, in order to be, because at the end it would mean that we are providing a conservative solution, and then once the new standards come in, then we can upgrade or evolve these solutions to just be using quantum safe technologies. So I think that what I would recommend is that the transition can start as of now.
Thank you. Let me start reading out the questions from the audience. The first one, I think, Mark, this is more relevant for you, is what key exchange algorithms are quantum safe? How secure are quantum key distributions for critical entities?
So I think that key exchange algorithms that are quantum safe, there are two types. There are the ones that are under the umbrella of post-quantum cryptography. And there we have several ones. There are several ones still running on the NIST post-quantum competition based on lattice-based cryptography or code-based cryptography, and also isogenous-based cryptography, and a few multivariate. When it comes to the ones that are related to QKD and that are related to quantum cryptography, I think that those are inherently quantum safe. So I'm not sure there's anything else to add there. And then I think the second question is more maybe for Jose Ignacio. Or
the logic. Well, indeed, they are easy, okay, and or not, but you should never forget that in the quantum world you don't get rid of a bit. So there is nothing like addition or anything like that. I mean, if you have two registers, you can have the AND operation in one, and the other should be there, because it has to be reversible. Okay, so it's not that you are translating classical logic into the quantum system. Is that you change the logic. Of course, the piece of the logic is the same, and not on a bit. It's what we call a Pauli sigma x. That's easy. Okay, but the others have to be adapted to the logic of quantum physics.
If I can add something, in a quantum computer, you have a relatively few instructions built in the hardware most of the time. In the past, we have a microprocessor with complex instruction sets. We call them a CISC. Computer microprocessor, because they have a complex set of instructions. But in quantum computing, there is what I call R square ISC schematic, because it's a ridiculous restricted instruction set. Because in my computer, in all type of computer, there is only we need only two hardware built in the processor to make any algorithm, a quantum algorithm. For example, for my computer, we use a C-note. It's one of the universal gates we need, and a translation of probability of the X, for example. So with those two instructions that are made in the hardware, we can do a long list of quantum computation. And the way we use these two universal quantum gates, you need to put on top of them a compilator. It's like in the same way we do some programming with classical or conventional computer. With the limit that Jose
let me add that there are already high-level languages, so that you forget about the details of the hardware. IBM has a thing called Qiskit, Google has a thing called SIG, and Enriquetti has another thing called forest. So the appearance of high-level languages is already happening. Let me say not high-level at the level of Python, but high-level at an intermediate level. So it is foreseeable that in the long-term future, the programmers will have the same kind of tools now we have for classical computation, accepting that the logic is different, but there will be high-level tools. Okay, you will have the module for optimization, the module for Fourier transform. All these will be modules that you would call simply.
Okay, the next question is, in April 2019, why did Serge Harosh remark that quantum computing is being overhyped during his visit to China? Who would like to take this one?
It's a question for an academic guy. I'm not an academic guy.
Well, many of us, very many times I've started my talks, not this one, saying hype of quantum computation. Why? Because people immediately you say something, they want to see a fantastic change in society. They don't understand the pace of real research. Real research has its pace. It's a good science is what it is. It is not faster. Now, many of us think that there is no doubt that we will achieve amazing things with quantum computation, but not next year. So there is a sort of a hype because you read the economies, you read whatever newspaper, and the way the news are written is a little bit scary. I mean, you have the feeling that people then suddenly will say, oh, all that was a hype, was false, and then the funds will be eliminated and so on. So many people, and I'm among them, maybe not today, but I'm typically among them, try to have a hand in the brake and, tell people, okay, we are getting there, but at our pace, okay, at our speed. So in this sense, it's not only Serge Aaraj, Ignacio, many other people say, please calm down the people, calm down. We will not get to the moon in 1 year. We'll get to Mars, sorry. We will get there, but not next year, okay?
Yeah, I think the next question is for you as well. It's about the D-wave being used to illustrate quantum supremacy in a similar way as done by Google.
The answer is no, and let me now be bad. So D-wave is not a truly quantum computer for two reasons. First, it's not able to carry what we call universal computation. Okay, it's an annealer that only serves to optimize, to minimize cost functions, which is an enormous amount of problems, but it is not universal. It cannot factor efficiently. And second, it's a machine that does not work within the coherence time. So the actions they take longer than the time the system is truly quantum. So it is clear that it's not a quantum machine. Yet, it works much better than expected. So according to what I said, the results should be poor. They are not that poor. But as a technology, is not comparable to what Google has done. Google has done something much more refined, much more refined. We hope that a coherent annealer will be really good. Okay, if the way were coherent, then we would have a real optimizer. So this is a third avenue that many people, we believe, is useful. And it's not only me, but, there are a consortium of 13 teams in Europe have an annealer. Google has a second team working on annealing and so on. Okay, so we think that D-Wave was the first step for a quantum annealer, yet it is not quantum. So the answer to the question is that it is not similar, neither comparable, but it is worth pursuing this idea.
How much of quantum computing applications can be cost-effectively addressed using massively parallel computers, like parallel classic computers? So this is more a question about if we use multiple parallel computers versus the quantum computer,
Well, let me try to tell the people what's the difference. For instance, you want to do some sort of simulations of the weather, that's something that is very time-consuming. in computers. Well, that's a problem that you can parallelize very well, very efficiently, and then you can send the computation to 100,000 cores, and you get an amazing improvement. But there are other problems that having a parallel computer is useless. Factorizing, that's, you don't gain a lot. Or a molecule. You don't gain anything. Why? Because you have to keep the state, the quantum state, in memory, and as I said, it grows exponentially. So having many processes is useless. I mean, you don't gain anything. So depending on the kind of problems, you need a parallel supercomputer is useful. Depending on some kind of problems, it's useless. So in this sense, I think that quantum computers will be extremely good at this specific class of problems like molecules, quantum chemistry, as training a neural network, as doing some tasks that there is no advantage in having 100,000 cores. Well, now we have 1 million. Let me give you another piece of information. The supercomputer we have in Barcelona has 170,000 cores. There is not one single job running on all of them, because you cannot really take advantage of that. The computer is divided in 4. Actually, the highest number of cores which are used at a time is 50,000. So this is why there is a limit to the traditional growth of supercomputers. What do we do now? A supercomputer with 2 million cores. Well, we will divide it in 20. We will have 20 computers of 50,000, because we are reaching the limit of energy, of parallelization, of the Moore's law. So that's why we need a quantum computer for intense computations that need a lot of memory, or things which are not addressable by supercomputers.
Yeah. Second comes, what is more cost-effective, owning or leasing quantum?
This is a question for you.
Computers. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm doing the economics of building a quantum computer. I should know that. I mean, it depends on, I guess it depends on multiple factors, right? If you are building a quantum center for a country, and then you're trying to solve optimization problems and actually come to the computation of universal computers, obviously you will have to buy, or actually not only owning a quantum computer, you would want to have the manufacturing or the actually development of this computer at the country level. You need the sovereignty in the development of that quantum computer. If you're someone trying to do an optimization problem, today there are multiple cloud-enabled platforms for doing quantum computations. You have the SDK that you can plug in that case, or that individual use case, or use cases for private institutions. Obviously, it makes more sense to lease capacity from a quantum computer. Today, I think this also comes from the fact that IBM has put a 20 qubit, I think, laptop that they are selling, but then bear in mind that this computational power that comes with this laptop is non-significant. You can do much more powerful computations on your classical laptops. So if we're talking about effective and powerful quantum computations, that's my view on it. I think let's jump to the, since we're a bit short on time, I'll keep this question to the end, because I had this question of Google's 53 qubit in my questions as well. So was Google's 53 qubit computer able to run Shor's algorithm? If no, why not?
Well, for Shor's, you need 2n+3 qubits. So that means that you could run formally 25 bits. Okay, you could factor numbers up to 25, but the point is that you would need a depth which is much larger than 20. You need much more time. You understand the layers of computation, because you need a Fourier transform that scales as n square and so on. So that means that until we have even with 53 qubit, the coherence time allows us to do thousands of operations. We could not use it at full capacity, which is to factor 25 bits. So, but there are rumors that they will open the computer to the community. So one of the first things I will do myself is to check how far I can factor numbers up to 6, 8, 10, 12. What is the amount I can do? Yeah, I mentioned rapidly the answer to the next P and P and so on.
Please.
So yeah, there is a new classification of complexity classes when you use quantum logic, and this is called, instead of P, it is called BQP, bounded quantum polynomial. BQP includes P, and P is included in the class quantum Merlin-Arthur, and the point is that BQP, which is the easy class on the quantum computer, includes factorization. So there is a reshuffling of problems when you go to the quantum classes, but there are classes like that. So that means in the same way as non-deterministic polynomial, that is, I have a verifier, okay, and now the verifier is a quantum verifier. So this is the change of paradigm.
The second question, we answered it. Then the time sharing question has been answered. You guys can remove it. The following question is, what is the thinnest quantum computing gate connection possible compared to the thinnest traditional digital computing gate connection? Jan, would you like to take this one?
I'm not sure if I understand the question well, but I think the question is, which number of qubits at a minimum you need to have to make something useful? I think 1 qubit could be something useful, because if you use 1 qubit to generate a random number, it's really random. So my answer, if I understand your question, and I apologize if it's not the case, I think with 1 qubit I'm able to send a random bit to the world. So I'm really happy with 1 qubit quantum computing.
Yeah. Actually, today I got accepted the paper. With a single qubit, you can do classification of random patterns. So you can do a lot with a qubit. The minimum, the holy grail will be to solve something relevant. People say 300 qubits to solve a nitrogen fixation, which is good for all the industry of fertilizers. So 300 qubits would be something serious.
But before these 300 qubits, we will be able to do some quantum repeater with few qubits. So I think, and a quantum repeater is a quantum computer, a small one. That the goal is just to transmit quantum entanglement between pairs of communication. So I think the main avenue with small quantum computer could be in telecommunication. It's a guess.
Good. Any more questions from the audience? Yes. No, it's okay. Please.
Okay, look, string theory. You know, when I went to, I got my PhD, I went to the States. I did work on string theory, so I'm guilty of that. Because there was a hype, okay? Now, let me say 2 things. String theory is an honest attempt to understand the ultimate laws that would merge quantum mechanics and relativity. A non-trivial one, but it is only telling you about the universe at the first 10 to the minus 43 seconds. So it has very little applicability to our world. Is there the problem, can you compare quantum computation to this irrational exuberance of string theory? No. Okay, quantum computation would have a large impact in society, a very large. It's nothing as holography, which is now the relevant topic in substituting string theory. It's not like, the ultimate way of merging quantum mechanics and relativity. No, this is a real thing for companies and for the lives of all of us.
Please.
Hi. There we go. This is somewhat of a sensitive question. So, not too long ago, there was talks about message manipulation Such as, like, I'll give you an example, WhatsApp saying, someone sends a message and it was manipulated, and the end user says, well, that's not the message, but the key algorithm or the encryption wasn't really broken. And I guess what I'm trying to get at is have we reached a stage where quantum computing can manipulate without any errors in the message, if that makes sense?
I try with my words. If you try to touch a quantum state in any manner of how you touch the quantum state, the photon polarization, the level of energy in my ion, and so on, you modify it, because there is a principle in quantum mechanics that you can touch. I said touch. You can touch a quantum state without perturbating in. So, if I understand your question, normally, thanks to quantum mechanics, you can manipulate a message without that the guy will receive it. He knows that the message has been modified on the line.
So the bottom line, someone is able to see that the message is manipulated. Okay.
Yeah, but maybe just as a continuation to Jan's answer. So the cryptographic part of that is that it has to do with what the attack that you mentioned. It has to do with how the key management has happened on WhatsApp, and then the storage of the key on the keychain on the device. But from a crypto breaking perspective, the same what we discussed before about the impact of quantum computers on the crypto schemes that are used for key exchange, that the principle will apply there.
Okay. Thank you.
You mentioned you had a question?
Hi, I'm Naveen. Rather in the last presentation, I saw the question that Moore's law, will it be applicable to the quantum physics? The basic understanding of the digital computation is like it works on the transistors. And transistors are something which has been dependent on the physical size of the transistor. Now we are in the era of graphene, so it can be reduced every, 18 months, or we can increase the size of transistors in per centimeter over the period. But when we talk about quantum physics, we are talking about at the atomic level. We are not talking about something I can increase more particles, or I can decrease particles, or I can change the speed of particles. How are we going to apply, when you said yes, Moore's law will be applicable to the quantum physics, how are we saying that it will be applicable? I have one more question. Do you want me to put it now, or shall I get the answer first and I'll put second question?
Will me answer this question?
Please.
You may know that the law more is not a physical law, it's experimental law. If you point on a chart the number of qubits from the year, you will see that the number of qubits is increasing as an exponential law every year. So if you have a number of qubits that is growing exponentially, you have something in quantum computer the processing power is better than an exponential. And on the contrary to what you mentioned, a transistor couldn't go to a limited size, because we are around 5 nanometer, I think now. 5 nanometer for a good tiny transistor. Quantum mechanics become to be an issue for the transistor. So we have engineers have a choice. Do they continue to reduce the size of the transistor, but they will face quantum mechanic issues, or do we use the quantum mechanical principle to make better computing? This is the choice we have as an engineer at the moment, I think. It's my thought.
May I also add, please understand that if we set up a Moore's law in quantum physics, that there are already some people putting figures and, we start to see something. If it were the case, it would be a double exponential. Okay, because doubling is exponential, but the power of every qubit is exponential with respect. So this is amazing. It's a double exponential. Okay, if it were a quantum law. Okay, so even if you only increase much less than a doubling, it would be amazing. Okay.
And cryptography and encryption, what we understand is something which is applicable on the data on the transit. But having something like quantum entanglement, where data is not at all transiting, data is communicating from one particle to the other particle in some random mechanism which is not known. So what are we going to implement this cryptography or encryption when entanglement, if possible, is an alternate to the messaging?
I'm not sure I get 100% what you're asking, but when it comes to data at rest, that basically it's I have information, I'm not transmitting it, and I want to keep it safe. We don't have to go to the quantum safe cryptography world to find a solution, because symmetric key cryptography will be still secure in that scenario. So we will be able to use our current block ciphers or stream ciphers to protect this kind of information.
I'm saying here, if I have two particles which are entangled and I use this entanglement as a message or information traveling.
You use it typically to exchange keys between two parties. You don't exchange the plain text information for that. So what you do is you do exchange the key using that phenomena on the quantum channel, and then after that key is established, you do the crypto using. If you're using symmetric crypto, you use what is here, because as we said, basically the Grover search doesn't break those. It reduces them by 75% or basically like by 50%. And then or if you want to use public key crypto for one reason, then you would move into the post-quantum crypto schemes. But that quantum channel, you will use it in order to exchange or to transport the key, basically.
And is there any recent development which promised the possibility of quantum tunneling, or is there any near about practical application or possibility of quantum tunneling turning into any applicable use?
And annealer works on quantum tunneling. All this D-wave technology is tunneling. Yeah.
Just to add a detail, the RIPE, which is the organization that manage all the IP address for internet, is going a specific hackathon, a pan-European hackathon, to build some useful application with a quantum internet. So the RIPE is beginning to make some useful application, and we will be part of this. And the goal of the hackathon is to create a sort of a chat system, a chat application over entangled system.
We have one more question. We can have Jose Ignacio, please, if you can take the question.
Yeah, this is a very good question. When the quantum computer can resolve complex computations so quick, how can a researcher verify that the correctness of the computation? Indeed, this is a very relevant issue. There is a lot of research on that. There are two issues. One is, first, you claim you have a quantum computer. How can you certify that you have a quantum computer? That's easy. I can send you a very complicated number, and please give me the prime numbers. Factor it. If you do it, I believe you have a quantum computer. Okay? So I can certify that you have a good quantum computer. But in other cases where the computation is something that I cannot make up, it's not obvious how to do that. In particular, quantum supremacy was an issue. How to assess the correctness of a computation that cannot be simulated classically, and there is no other quantum computer in the world. How do you do that? So the way they have to do it is that they have proceed with qubits, 40, 45, 50, 51, 52. And they have simulated all the time to see that there was agreement with the classical, and now hoping that the quantum computer will be right. And second, rerunning the program many times to see that it was consistent, so it was reproducible. But I think there will be a lot of work, because we are penetrating in a world that, how do you check what you have done? How you certify that you are doing well? A company comes and wants the answer to a complicated problem. Here it is. How can I tell the company this is right? It's not easy. How I can tell this is optimal? Okay.
But we have exactly the same with conventional computer. When we program it, we don't know yet if there is no bugs most of the time.
There are very many classical computers in the world, so you can reproduce in other computers. Okay.
Okay, great. We're out of time. I'm actually very, very happy to hear the interest of everyone in quantum computations, quantum technologies. I guess stay tuned with the efforts that are happening in the UAE. We will be having outreach programs, and then we will have in-country development, so exciting times ahead. Thank you very much.